A lot of the discussion I've seen around the character of Angrboda has been focused on, oh, she and Atreus are so cute. When are they gonna get married? And yeah, they are very cute together. And yes, I do want them to get married. But her character actually has a lot more going on than just being a romantic interest for Atreus. And she does a lot of work towards deepening the game's themes of destiny, choice, and family. I've also heard more than one person say the Ironwood and Angrboda section of God of War Ragnarok is their least favorite part of the game. People say that it's too linear and scripted, that it has very little action and it's super slow paced, full of long, unskippable dialogue. This is especially noticeable on a second playthrough. If you're playing just to get to the next boss battle, Ironwood will be a slog to get through. I think this is all generally fair criticism. I also think some of the dialogue between Atreus and Angrboda has a quippy, clever Marvel Cinematic Universe vibe to it that doesn't fit the rest of the game, and I personally find a bit grating. But with all that said, Ironwood is one of my favorite parts of the game, and I absolutely look forward to it every time I play, because it feels vibrant and lighthearted. God of War Ragnarok is a very, very bleak game. So much of the experience, at least until the end, is dark and depressing. Every character is struggling, every character is preparing for an ultimate confrontation which they do not know if they will survive. And that's not a criticism, that's how it should be. This is God of War. It's always been a bleak series. Things never go well for anyone in these games. And more than that, this is God of War Ragnarok, the prophesied unavoidable violent destruction of all that is. This game should be particularly bleak, and for the most part, it is. However, that oppressive bleakness, it gets to you. Sometimes you just need a little light in the darkness, which is why I love Ironwood so much. It's this delightful little intermission, vibrant, light-filled with fuzzy animal friends, and lots of cute little interactions between Atreus and Angrboda. It's the only time in the entire game when anyone is having fun. The only time anyone is laughing. Of course, a huge part of what makes Ironwood so pleasant is Angrboda. She's silly, she's quirky, she likes to play games. All the fuzzy animal friends at the tea party are her fuzzy animal friends. She's easily my favorite of the characters introduced in Ragnarok. And narratively, Ragnarok really needs her here. Needs this lighter intermission. Atreus' story needs her. He needs something to work towards, a future life to fight for. Relationships of his own separate from his father, so he can grow into his own self. However, I'm kind of making the same mistake that Angrboda herself makes in the game by only discussing her character in terms of how she relates to Atreus' story arc, how she affects his development, what role she plays in his story. Because Angrboda, even when she herself doesn't realize it, is her own character, and her storyline is in some ways independent of the larger narrative. Angrboda, like basically every single other character in the story, is obsessed with prophecy and destiny. Kratos and Atreus, Freya, Odin, all of these characters are constantly talking about prophecy, fighting it or seeking to fulfill it or subvert it. But even among all these prophecy-obsessed characters, Angrboda is an extreme example. Her life is ruled by prophecy to a greater extent than those others. I think this has to do with her being a Jotun or a giant. The Jotun seem to have been particularly interested in prophecy, and their prophecies, especially those concerning the Battle of Ragnarok and the destruction of the world, drive the entire game's plot. Side note, I wish I understood the mechanics of the Jotun's prophecies better. They are so important to the plot, but I still don't know how they work. The Norns, who also tell prophecies, state that they simply understand people's natures really well, which allows them to make very accurate predictions of what choices those people will make. Is it the same with the Jotun? Did they just understand Odin's nature so well that they could easily predict how he would bring about the destruction of himself and Asgard? Or do the Jotun use some other method to formulate their prophecies? All Angrboda will say about the matter is that sometimes giants have dreams, which I don't think is a very satisfying explanation. but ultimately it doesn't really matter how they do it. In an analysis of Angrboda's character, all that matters is that she believes in those prophecies, has a more rigid belief in the absolute nature of prophecy than any other character in the game. This is most obvious when she tells Atreus to get over his squeamishness and accept his fate.
It's okay. You're fine.
Sorry. I don't know what happened.
Oh, don't worry about it. It happens to everyone.
That happens to everyone?
Not the wolf part, but getting scared about your future.
That cannot be my future. It says I serve Odin and my father dies. There's just no way.
Look, this is the only way things turn out. The sooner you accept that, the better.
When discussing prophecy, every other character states that they believe there is some amount of flexibility. Like Kratos and Odin are both trying to stop the prophecy of Ragnarok from coming about in different ways. Angrboda is the only character who says no. Fighting prophecy is useless. No matter what, it will come true. Except maybe Freya. The Vanir goddess also seems to have a strong belief in prophecy, but that's a subject for another video. Angrboda's entire life is ruled by prophecy. And not just any prophecy, but by a very specific and singular prophecy, which is Atreus' destiny. Her story, she believes, only matters so much as it is a part of his story. According to that prophecy, the one she lives her life by, she should show up in Atreus' story only once to reveal to him his destiny. And then after that, her life is a blank as far as the prophecy is concerned. She fades from the story and thus fades from relevance. This is very different from every other character in the game. Every other character has some kind of prophesied part to play in the battle for Ragnarok. Even Brock and Sindri, while not specifically named, presumably should be part of the dwarven army that will presumably fight in Ragnarok. Obviously, that's not how it plays out, but according to the prophecy, that's probably how it should have gone. But not Angrboda. She doesn't have any part to play in Ragnarok. So, as a thought experiment, imagine that you and your family's lives, all of your decisions, all of your choices, every day of your life was ruled by a written prophecy. But then, suddenly, you're not in that prophecy anymore. The prophecy has nothing to say about you, doesn't care about you past a certain point. If you take prophecy as seriously as Angrboda does, if you believe worth and value are tied to your place in the prophecy, what else can you conclude except that you don't matter? She already believes that choices don't matter, since it will all lead to the same conclusion anyway, but after she finishes sending Atreus on his way, she thinks her entire life doesn't matter anymore. She is understandably bothered and depressed by this.
Sit back.
This is a lot of responsibility.
It is. And it's all yours.
Hey, you okay?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm done. I guess. Now that I've given you those, my part in all this is over.
You could always come with me. We could fight Odin together.
If I was supposed to fight alongside you, I wouldn't disappear from your damn mural halfway through.
Angrboda is a very young character, and I think this conflict of hers, this looking at the future and not having any idea what part she can play, is really relevant to young people. The thing is, for most of us, our lives are kind of written for us up to an extent. For the first 18 years or so of your life, you will go to school. Your every day will be scheduled for you. Most of your classes will be chosen for you. Most of your days will look the same. You will be spending most of your days with the exact same people. Then, one day, you graduate, and all of a sudden, your life is not scheduled for you anymore. All of a sudden, you don't know what tomorrow will look like. All of a sudden, you have to make every decision for yourself. It's not uncommon for young people to get overwhelmed during this transition. I think Angrboda is in a similar situation. Her life was scheduled for her right up to the moment she meets Atreus. And then after that, she's on her own, and she doesn't know what the hell to do with herself. She feels like she doesn't matter. She feels like she has nothing to contribute. It's a meaningful and relatable conflict. The last time she and Atreus speak, she seems really certain that they are not going to see each other again, that she is going to rigidly follow the prophecy and fade out of the story.
What happens to you now?
I don't know. Like I said, once you're gone, my part in this is over. So, feel free to stay.
I think your part is as big as you want it to be. I am gonna see you again.
Sure.
However, very soon after this, by her own choice, without any prodding by Atreus or anyone else, she leaps right back into the story. She randomly shows up out of nowhere in Muspelheim to check out another giant prophecy with Atreus.
Ah! Angrboda?
For someone who is trained as a warrior, you are tragically easy to startle.
I didn't. What are you doing here?
A girl can't visit a shrine of her own volition?
You're here for Sorter's marble.
Maybe.
You're out looking for more giant marbles? You know what this looks like, right?
Like the life story of one of our people? And also maybe a storage closet.
No. This looks an awful lot like Defying Destiny.
Her sudden appearance here runs counter to everything we've learned about her character up to this point. Before, she had psychologically shackled herself to the prophecy, was very adamant that everything in that prophecy would come true, including her own disappearance from the story. And then boom, she's right back into the story. Not playing a major role necessarily, but that she's here at all is surprising. Her sudden appearance in Muspelheim is evidence of a pretty dramatic internal shift on her part. Evidence that she has changed her mind about the absolute quality of prophecy, at least where her personal story is concerned. This is only a minor criticism, but I really wish we as the audience got to see this shift in her character happen. Angrboda's change of heart concerning the rigidity of prophecy happens totally off screen. I'm not sure how the developers could have worked it in, but I want to see her wrestle with this decision to subvert the prophecy and join Atreus in Muspelheim. But anyway, next she randomly pops up a second time in Midgard when Atreus is on his way to trick Odin. In this scene, you can see her doubling down on her new belief that prophecy is not absolute.
This is your wool?
Ah! Stop doing that!
Oh, were you having a moment? It sort of looked like you were having a moment. I can go.
No. Sorry. This is Fenrir. It's okay, Ben. She's,
So I was right about your knife.
Huh?
I'm glad you found a place for his soul.
Me too. Hey, how'd you find me here? Loki? This is my marble.
And where are you heading off to?
Back to Asgard. Hey, I'm actually using him.
Uh-huh.
Angrboda, look. Once I see this through, I'm gonna know everything. How to save my father, how to stop Ragnarok, and maybe, hopefully, how to bring our people back.
Loki, those are all very noble intentions. But he's Odin.
You have faith in me, right?
Of course I do. I just hope the story you're writing for yourself is the one that you truly want.
Notice when she tells Atreus, I hope the story you're writing for yourself is the one you truly want. That's a far cry from her earlier belief that Atreus' story was already written for him. Then she appears at the end of the battle for Ragnarok where, with the help of the interdimensional hopping giant wolf Fenrir, she saves basically every major character in the story.
It's Ragnarok. He's here.
very dramatically demonstrating how, even though the Giants didn't have a prophecy that explicitly included her, her choices can still make a huge impact on the story. Finally, Angrboda pops up in the epilogue where she and Atreus are acting very cute together, and that's all fine and dandy, but once again I'm making the mistake of discussing Angrboda within the context of other characters' stories. How she pops up periodically in Atreus' story, or how she rescues Kratos in the others. Angrboda is her own character, with her own life and her own problems and conflicts separate from everyone else, completely independent of Kratos and Atreus in the battle for Ragnarok. And this is what makes her such an interesting character. Not the part she plays in other characters' storylines, but her own storyline. Angrboda's parents, who seemingly loved her very much, died when she was young, leaving her the heavy responsibility of guiding Atreus and protecting the souls of the last remaining giants all by herself. In spite of this, Angrboda is not a lonely character. Her life is filled with life, and animals, and color. She has all these different delightful magical animal friends. She is a painter and artist. She spends her days taking care of her animals and painting. And even though a bit lonely, her life does seem sort of idyllic, especially within the bleak context of Ragnarok's generally dark story. Except when her life isn't idyllic at all. When they passed, her parents did not leave Angrboda totally alone. She has a living grandmother, Grýla, her father's mother. However, Grýla is a broken woman, broken by grief by the loss of her family. This is a sort of character we've seen a lot of in the God of War series, and especially in Ragnarok. Loss and how characters deal with loss is a very common theme in this game. Sindri loses Brock, Freya loses Baldur. Thor loses his sons, Kratos and Atreus lose Faye. Odin loses Heimdall, who is actually his son, and he barely seems to care, but this isn't a video about Odin. All of these characters deal with their grief in different ways. Freya and Sindri choose revenge. Thor chooses alcoholism. Kratos and Atreus choose to dedicate themselves to keeping each other safe. Odin chooses to not give a shit. Grýla chooses escapism. Instead of dealing with her grief, she chooses to run from it. She steals the souls of animals and uses those souls to briefly live inside those animals' memories, to experience the freedom of being a wild animal and not having to worry about grief or loss. The way the game presents this, it looks a lot like substance abuse. Grýla is addicted to this animal soul stealing in the same way that an alcoholic is addicted to alcohol. And this escapism allows her to postpone facing her grief in the same way that getting drunk can accomplish the same thing. Atreus and Angrboda, being the bleeding heart animal lovers that they are, decide to put a stop to all this, leading to what I think is the best boss fight in the game. With every other boss fight, something is trying to kill our protagonists, and our protagonists are trying to kill it back. The fight with Grýla feels very unique in that she's really only trying to kick Atreus and Angrboda out of her house, and they're just trying to break her big soul bowl. The mechanics here feel really smart and different. The game also does a fantastic job of both building up to this fight and imbuing the encounter with a lot of emotional weight. The sections leading up to the fight, when Atreus and Angrboda are sneaking through her home, feel really tense and scary. Like there's this sense that she could come home at any moment and that Grýla is very dangerous. There's also a sense that Angrboda and Grýla are characters who used to deeply love each other, and maybe even still do, but have come to an impasse in their relationship where this conflict is unavoidable. It makes for a fantastic boss fight, one of the best in the series. Like, for comparison, the battle with Hrist and Mist later in the game is mechanically phenomenal, but it doesn't have the uniqueness or emotional weight that the battle with Grýla has here. Also, side note, it's really interesting to me that the battle with Grýla is followed almost immediately by the battle with Freya, which is also a fantastic boss battle, as Grýla and Freya are emotionally both in very similar places during these battles. Both are former allies of their opponents, and the fight leads both of them to having a path forward to healing, even if Grýla doesn't recognize it. So Atreus and Angrboda do succeed in destroying Grýla's big soul bowl, and this leads to a really brutal final confrontation between Angrboda and Grýla.
What did you do?
I saved you.
I
I should have thrown you to the wolves right after I pulled you out of your mother. Get out!
Just...
Get out!
No. Let's go.
You think you've done something here, granddaughter? You are nothing! And no one will ever remember you! Not even Loki! You'll just be a forgotten chapter in his story! He'll be too busy mourning his father! I see you again! You wish you died with your parents!
The paradox of family is that while your family can be the single greatest source of support in your life, your family will also inevitably hurt you more than anyone else in your life can, because your family is closer to you than anyone else. Your family knows your worries, your anxieties, your flaws, and know how to use those to hurt you if they choose to. Grýla here is just trying to hurt Angrboda, picking at what she knows is Angrboda's greatest anxiety, her lack of destiny. Next, listen closely to how Angrboda responds.
You sure it's alright to leave her here? What if she comes out looking for...
She used to leave me food.
What?
She'd say she didn't care about me, but sometimes I'd wake up and I'd see a loaf of bread sitting next to the fire. Just baked just the way she always used to. She's not a monster, you know? She's lost.
What she's doing here is comforting herself by reminding herself that Grýla, in spite of all those hurtful, terrible things she just said, that her grandmother still loves her. She knows it, or at least she wants it to still be true. She's seen the evidence of that love in the food her grandmother left for her. I don't think Angrboda really knows if her grandmother still loves her after what just happened. I think she might just be trying to comfort herself, saying that version of her grandmother that left the food for her, that cared for her, that's her real grandmother. That woman who is screaming at her and hurting her, that's a woman who isn't well, isn't thinking straight, isn't her real grandmother. I don't know if that's true, but I absolutely can understand that impulse to remember the good things this person has done, remember the love, even if it's gone. This moment is what makes Angrboda as a character for me. This is a conflict that is all her own. It has nothing to do with Kratos or Atreus or Ragnarok. Sure, Atreus is here witnessing it, but that's all he's really doing, witnessing it. This is the moment where Angrboda turns from simply being a supporting character in Atreus' story, a cute romantic interest, into her own character. A character that has her own deeply felt conflicts. A character that is fascinating not just because of the part she plays in the Battle of Ragnarok, but fascinating in her own right.